quick intro to this series of videos. Back in March, we did our first live podcast where we talked about some of the most influential movies in our lives. We wanted to share some of our favorite moments from that podcast. If you want to listen to that complete podcast, the link will be in the description. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to our channel. Now, onto the video.
So Soto, let me tell you about my first pick. Or my picks in
Nice.
general, I wanted to take out of different aspects of my life. Growing up, because I could easily probably pick five films from my childhood, and it would be a fucking phenomenal list.
Hmm.
Because 80s and just had a lot of good movies. I was huge in the fantasy, adventure, sci-fi, kind of that. And I was trying to think of what movies sum that all up. And like I said, I could have probably done five. But Soto, let me just give you a list of what I didn't put on that I was debating. Neverending Story,
Great
Princess
movie.
Bride,
Love it.
Goonies,
So
Labyrinth,
good.
Monster
Awesome.
Squad. I even thought about here. Shout out to my mom's favorite movie, Last Unicorn. Even a hidden gem with a young John Cusack, Journey of Natty Gann. And if no one ever heard of seen that,
That I
it's
have
on
no
Disney
idea about.
Plus. Oh my God, it's a fucking good adventure movie. It was one of the first films I saw as a kid. I love it. Definitely, like I said, if you got Disney Plus, check it out. So all
You
these
said John
movies,
Cusack is in
a
this?
very young John Cusack. He's not the star. He's kind of like the side character. But yes, Journey and That
Wow.
again. I'm just saying it again because I love that film. It might be up there in one of my favorites for its time. But yeah, so these are
Wow.
movies that I thought about putting on my list for my childhood. But then I always came back to the one. And to me, I feel like there's no other answer for me personally than The Dark Crystal. To me, I
Ooh.
love this film. I think I just mentioned it with Temple of Doom. I love the darker tone. I love Jim Henson. I love the Muppets. I know that's a little bit
Hmm.
different than Dark Crystal, but the story behind this and everything. I just actually watched this morning. Just it's been so many years. I'm like, you know what? Let me watch this before we get on, and I loved it. Um, but the tonality of this movie is great. And I always said, if you loved Dark Crystal as a kid, you are meant to work at a video store. Now, obviously, they don't exist, but you're meant to work at a video store when you're like a teen and adult, young adult, like we did. Like, I love this film. Everything about this was just great. I know storytelling with the fantasy films can get out there, but it's actually it's such an easy plot, just easy to get into. But this is what got me into like the darker tones of movies. And I will say this: everyone talks about in our age group the Never-Ending Story, Atreyu's
Hmm.
horse, Artax, being one of the
Of
saddest
course.
scenes. But I'm like, no, that wasn't it for me. Though that was sad. You do see him at the end. The horse comes back. Spoiler alert: if you haven't seen
Yes.
Never-Ending Story, and if you haven't
Oh,
seen
I
Never-Ending
know,
Story,
right?
fuck you. But the Dark Crystal to me had the saddest scenes, and I don't know how much of this
Yeah.
you remember, where they're
Hmm.
riding the long legs. I don't even know what they're called, and then those freaking beetles with like that armor and claws scared the shit out of me as a kid. You know, they get knocked over with one of the long legs and they die, and then they hover around and they
Yeah.
are like, there's a lot of death in this, and they talk, because they're the last Gelflings, and I don't know. To me, the Dark Crystal sums up everything I love about films. Is like I said, the fantasy stuff, the simple love story. They are the last. It's a little bit of Star Wars because it's weird because you've got like the elders and the Skeksis or whatever, and I know I'm mispronouncing. At the end, they got to
Oh,
come. It's like
yeah.
it
Those
brings
birds.
balance. Once one dies, the other dies. So there's a lot of balance, and someone who doesn't know what's going on is in charge. And I laugh because the elders tell Jen, hey, this is what you got to go and do. And like he steps outside and he's like, I don't want to do this alone. And then he looks like,
Hmm.
alone I go. Like that's all it took. I'm like, well, that was a weird line of dialogue, but it's yes. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's perfect dialogue, but the story was kind of perfect. He just saved the world or saved their world basically. But yes, I
Yeah.
rewatched this actually this morning again, and I still love it. So as far as my childhood goes, this is the one movie I had to pick because, and it was tough, but I always come back to it. Like I said, I think just because I love the darker tone of movies, and you'll probably hear that a little bit later, or like I said, just recently,
From the
Temple of Doom.
beginning, you've liked the
Yeah,
darker tone of movies.
this
From the
this
beginning
this
of your life, it
shaped
just
me
spoke
as
to you.
they're like, we're gonna start you at 5 because I think this came out in 82, 83. So I don't even know when I first watched this, but we used to watch a lot of these movies, and I watched this again and again, and even the little furball dog I laughed at, and I
Yeah.
just still laugh at. So yes, and I had to pick this, like I said, and it's not just because of the fantasy aspect. It's because a lot of the things I like, I do like a little bit of a darker story, something that's not typical. Even though I joke that there's a little bit Star Wars to it with balance of the good and the bad, but let's forget all about that right there. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, and the
Yeah.
puppetry, I mean, though a little bit off, still kind of works. Like I said, I mean, yeah, it's early '80s, so some of the scenes kind of look fake, but it still looks amazing to me. So, go ahead.
No, it
Anyway.
was just like this is one of the first movies that was kind of disturbing to me when I was growing up because it was totally different. Like you expect certain things to have happy endings. There's no happy ending here, at least from what I remember.
Oh, there's a happy ending. It just takes a lot. I mean, but still, people
Yeah.
die. It's not like they're coming back to life at the end.
Right,
Um,
exactly. Yeah, like Artax, like you mentioned. But yeah, I watch this all the time. This is the same exact time I was watching something like another movie called Legend with Tom Cruise and Tim Curry. So watching Dark Crystal, Legend, Neverending Story was a vibe. But this one was the one that was I wouldn't say I didn't understand. It was harder to watch for me younger because I didn't understand. I wasn't like the themes and everything like that were a little bit darker than what I was used to. So it took me a little bit to kind of get into it. But what I did though, I mean, it's an absolute masterpiece. I think I actually saw a little bit of the newer one too. And you're right, it all works. Like it's done great, it's done awesome, and definitely worthy of being a classic.
yeah, and I know I got a few years on you, so hence maybe the age at that time when this came out. But and I get it, and I understand why not everyone might love this movie, and it's
Hmm.
okay, because especially if you're used to, like you said, the happy, movies, happy endings. There is a happy ending because he did bring balance, and the Sketskis and the elders kind of combine to become one, and he's got his love interest. He finds out he's not alone, she's not alone, so whatever happens to them. So there is a happy ending, but yes, a lot of people die. Their whole clan got murdered in a fire, and things are
Yeah,
happening, and there was
yeah.
kidnappings, and so there's even, like I said, at the time it was more acceptable, I guess, in the '80s, just to be like, yeah, we're gonna put a stake through your heart. But I think I loved it and I was happy with this. And I still, like I said, I just watched it again and it made me smile. I'm like, this is a fucking good movie. And I had to put this as one of the first films that I ever loved. Though there was a lot, like I said, it was a tough choice because there was a lot of movies that came out when we were kids that we could have put and easily talked about. But to me, that sums up my childhood out of all of them.
Yeah.
So, oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, no, Dark Crystal is definitely, I mean, again, like I said, just I was not used to seeing things die at the time that
Yeah,
I watched that. You know, that was huge.
it was. It was. So,